Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you a new and improved way to make the epoxied cutting board. I already have a tutorial on this, but I did find a way to get an even glossier finish on top, and it makes it look even blingier, and who does not want that? So let's get started. The biggest part in this is a little extra ink epoxy. I have tried many epoxies, and this is by far the shiniest. Even when it's dry, it still looks wet. So that is how we're going to get that final amazing finish on this. But to start, we are going to tape off the back of our board. If you have a board that feels like it has any oils on it, you may want to lightly sand with a really fine grit sandpaper and then wipe that off clean. Allow it to dry completely because we are going to use epoxy and we do not want any moisture underneath, and then apply your tape. I am separating my epoxy into 3 cups because I will be using 3 different glitters, and I'm setting some clear to the side just in case I do not have enough, and I can just mix up a little bit more. The 3 glitters we are using is Next, Hippity Hop, and Hella Cute from PDB Blanks and Glitters. And I'm just going to add a little bit of each glitter to each of my cups here with epoxy. It does take a little bit of glitter, so I like to use the chunkier glitters so it is a little bit thicker and you have to use less. If you use a fine, it is going to take a little bit more than what it would if you were to use a chunky. This is not my typical color palette that I would choose for these. My customer just wanted pink, pink, and more pink. And she said, make it extra blinky. So that is what I have done here. I got the brightest pinks that I have, and then Hippity Hop just sort of tones it down just a little bit and helps everything just come together. Now I do have about 100 milliliters of epoxy all together here. I won't use it all. I will just use the extra that I don't use on this board in a small mold that I have set to the side. But since we are using so much epoxy, I do try to work pretty quickly. A little extra is not a fast set epoxy, but it does cure really quickly, which I love. So I typically work a little bit faster with it doing big projects like this. And the stones that I will be using is Firestone. I did purchase it from Amazon and will drop the link below. I have purchased quite a few of these different colors, so I will put some additional links for you to, choose whatever variation of colors that you would like. And to start pouring our glitters, I'm just going to take the first color is going to be the one that the Firestone is going to go on. So I'm going to make those the largest and make sure that I have them in alternating patterns on the board. I try to fan out along the edges and then just taper it going towards the middle. And you can see that I have included some space in there in between them to allow for the other colors. Now you want to leave plenty of room at the bottom of this board for use with food. I always tell my customers not to put food directly on the design surface, just for safety reasons. So I only usually design the top third portion of the board. Going in with our second color here, you can see that I'm putting this on pretty thick. The reason is when I apply the stones to the hot pink that I put on first, it is going to cause that to spread, and it will allow the epoxy to drip over the sides without causing the glitter to spread so much that you see the board through the glitter. It's definitely going to be a little more difficult to get that glitter to stay in place around the loop at the top, and that is okay because really you don't want it so thick that it's lumpy and bumpy, just in case they do want to display this instead of use it as a kitchen item. I have had a couple of customers that said once they got it, they just could not possibly use it for food. So they hung it up in their kitchen on their wall. So just don't worry so much of getting that really thick coverage around the loop on the top. If your board does have that, you'll want it to be really smooth in the middle, and that's sort of difficult to have whenever you have chunks of glitter. We are just going to take the Firestone and place them throughout the hot pink that we applied first. It does look better if you put them pretty close to each other but not touching. It just gives a thicker pattern and it looks much better once you apply the final coat of epoxy on top of them. You don't want to push these down on the glitter because you will be able to see the board through them. You basically just want to drop them on top of the layer of glitter that's there and allow them to adjust themselves. And once you have all of the stones in place, you are going to go back with the glitter and apply that around the edges to allow it to fall over the sides. Once you have completed coating the sides, you're going to run over lightly with a torch to pop any micro bubbles and get a nice smooth surface on top. Give it a few minutes to drip over the edge, and then once you see that it has pretty much stopped dripping, you're going to take either a popsicle stick or a gloved hand and remove the excess off of the bottom of the board. Allow this to dry for about 3 hours, and of course that also depends on your epoxy brand that you're using. Then you can flip it over and remove the tape. And once it is completely dry to the touch, you want to take a sanding block or some sandpaper and sand those edges down a little bit so that you have a smooth surface on the edge. And a lot of times I will also flip over and sand on the bottom side as well. And if you have any sort of drips that may have come down after you removed your tape, you can actually take a very sharp X-Acto knife or craft knife and cut those off. And then make sure that you go over at the very last with a very fine grit sandpaper, and that will bring the original finish back to the wood. Now we are going to go back and apply more tape in the same place as we did before. That way our clear coat does not run over our nice smooth edges. And I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but I am going to let it play through so you guys can see how I applied the tape and trimmed it on the back. This is the same way that I did in the very beginning. Now I did forget in the beginning to mention to make sure that your board is suspended. That way the epoxy can drip off and it's not going to stick to the surface underneath. I have my ALE epoxy mixed here, and I am going to go over all of these stones and drizzle it on top. You want to get a really good coverage on the top of these because they do tend to have a little bit of a sharp edge. I mean, they are glass, so I make sure that I get those coated really well. And then we'll go through and pull the epoxy around on the board just with a gloved hand. And you can also drizzle some around and make sure that it is on the edge as well. Now, I try not to have such a thick layer close to the bottom of the design. I want it to come over the glitter just a little bit, but it's pretty much going to do its own thing once I sit it down. I'll allow it to dry. So you don't want so much there that it's going to start coming down your board. And another way to help prevent it from coming down too far is to prop the bottom side of your board or the non-decorated side of your board up just a tad so the epoxy will naturally gravitate to the top of your board. And once you are satisfied with the top coat coverage, just allow it to dry for another 3 hours depending on your epoxy. Flip it over and remove the tape underneath. And then you will want to let this sit until it's completely dry in the full 72-hour cure time before handing it over to your customer or putting it in the mail. If the back by chance has a rough surface after your final coat, you can also go back over that with fine grit sandpaper and then just wipe clean. And here is our final result. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. These are always so fun to make. I will link my original tutorial down in the comments in case you would like to check that one out as well. I use micas and actually do everything in one step rather than two. So it does save just a little bit of time, but I really like the glossy finish that this one has. All of my supplies will be listed in the details. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and comment if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.